Hey, creeplings. Tonight we're talking about one of my favorite comedies, Beetlejuice. Gotta remember, can't say his name 3 times. So, Beetlejuice came out, I want to say it was 1988. I could be wrong on that year. It was definitely the mid to late 80s. It was Tim Burton's second or third film. I know his first film was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So, of course, directed by Tim Burton, starring Michael Keaton as the ghost with the most, Beetle. Almost got myself there. Call him Mr. Juice tonight. So he stars as Mr. Juice. Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin as Barbara and Adam Maitland. I'm gonna call him Alec Maitland. I know I'm going to. Bear with me on this one. Alec, Adam, very, very easy to get mixed up. I feel like I have something in my teeth, so if I keep licking, I'm sorry. Winona Ryder in one of her earlier roles. This is probably one of her biggest roles up to date as Lydia Dietz. I cannot remember the guy who plays her dad, and we are not going to talk about his personal life because he's been embroiled in some scandal lately. We're just going to leave it as the guy was a Tim Burton regular at the time. I think his first name is Jeffrey, and he plays her dad. Small role compared to some of the others, and we're just going to drop that there. Catherine O'Hara plays her stepmother. And again, why are these names leaving my brain? Lydia's the daughter. Anyway, as Mrs. Dietz. We'll call her Mrs. Dietz. This is Tim Burton at his best. This is Michael Keaton pre-Batman at his comedic best. This is Winona Ryder getting into those roles that pretty much made her the goth queen of the late 80s, early 90s. It's the first film that I ever saw by Tim Burton, and... Well, no, I take that back. I think I did see Pee-wee's Big Adventure before, but this was the first film that, in my mind, that I think of when someone says Burtonian. This is a Tim Burton film. This is a very Burtonian film. It's a comedy. It's weird. It's creepy, but not really gory. Very stylized. You've got the black and white stripes, the sunken eye look. Everything he's known for started in this movie. Quick recap of the plot. Adam and Barbara Maitland, yay, I got his name right, are a married couple, and they get into a car accident and die. Boo-hoo. And it is about their journey from dying, going to the afterlife, meeting their caseworker, Juno. Juno's hilarious. I cannot remember the lady who played her, but the afterlife is just so colorful, so strange, so deliciously beautiful. And they get the handbook for the recently deceased, of course. In the time that they go from being trapped in their home, because that's where they were trapped, they're not allowed to leave their home as part of their ghostly existence, I think is the word I'm looking for. So by the time that it takes them to go to the afterlife and come back, the Dietzes have bought the house and have moved in, and they are making huge changes. They're yuppies from New York City. The mother is stepmother, technically, is an artist. She's played brilliantly by Catherine O'Hara, though. I mean, comedic to the hilt. I will remember her name eventually. I promise you. I will remember her name. She's just out there. Lydia is kind of feeling ignored. She's a photographer. Very obsessed with the strange, and as you know, I myself am strange and unusual. When her dad says we'll tear the basement into a dark room, my life is a dark room. One dark room. Gotta represent, man. Lydia's the only one that can see them because she is strange and unusual. She sympathizes with them. They keep trying to haunt the family away. They can't see them. They don't care. They get a little ad from one, what they call it? Someone who, to exercise the living. Not like exercise, woohoo, I'm exercising, but like exorcist exercise. And it is Michael Keaton's Mr. Juice, the ghost with the most. And they get his services, and all hell breaks loose. Because Adam and Barbara get to a point where they like Lydia. Since they couldn't have children or didn't have children, I want to say it's couldn't. Since they didn't have children, and she becomes kind of a part of their lives, they come to a point where they're like, we're willing to work with you and your parents, but we want to make this work. We love you. They kind of adopted her. She's all happy because she likes them. They're, really great. They pay attention to her. They kind of understand her. But Beetlejuice is having none of it. He's trying to get back to the land of the living. Hence why, if you say his name 3 times, you can also banish him by saying his name 3 times too. So, anyway, I don't want to end up being visited by the ghost with the most. So we're going to keep that name down a little bit. I know I'm umming a lot tonight. I apologize. It's got a great score by Danny Elfman. It's got a great soundtrack. This is the movie that introduced me to Harry Belafonte again. I remember a few songs from the episode of The Muppets that he did when I was a wee child. But this one, you've got the Jump in the Line at the end of the movie. You've got the iconic dinner scene with the Banana Boat song. Every time I hear the Banana Boat song, I think of that scene, dancing around the table. Who knew I liked calypso music until I heard Harry Belafonte. This movie introduced me to Harry Belafonte. This movie really kind of helped me figure out that being dark in your soul wasn't necessarily evil in your soul. It was just an appreciation for the underappreciated and hidden things in life. I identified a lot with Lydia. I still do, actually. I think, and this is just me spitballing here, I think Lydia was kind of a part of Tim Burton, to be honest. The way he describes himself and living in suburbia and all of that. And I can see it. I mean, there's a lot of us who saw ourselves in Lydia. And with the sequel that's going to be coming out, that's going to be interesting to revisit this thing over 30 years later. Seeing how Lydia has grown and changed is going to be interesting. Speaking of sequels, yes, they are, I think, currently filming, or maybe the filming stopped because we're right in the middle of an actor strike, and the writer's strike in Hollywood has just gotten a tentative agreement to end. I'm just going to say I stand with the writers and the actors and the video game creators, and I stand with the creators versus the people that are just sitting at desks making bad decisions and pocketing the money. Sorry guys, that's just how I feel. You can rip me apart below, and I'm not saying everybody that sits at a desk in a high producer situation, the head of a company, I'm not saying they're all jerks and greedy, but they are a bit out of touch with reality, to put it bluntly. But I'll get off that tangent now. Back onto Beetlejuice 2. I'm interested in seeing this. I don't know if we exactly needed it, but we were left with BJ sitting in a waiting room, waiting for his turn. And he had a very long number. So we'll see. It's also spawned a Broadway musical, which I have not seen yet. I have heard some of the soundtrack. The guy who was in the original Broadway cast, great voice that he created for Beetlejuice. Yeah, he was actually like, I keep saying his name. I keep expecting him to pop over my shoulder. The character was used a lot at Universal Studios. He actually still wanders Universal Studios and warms up the audience at the horror makeup show, which is one of my dreams I would love to go see, but I'm a wage slave and I don't get to do that stuff because it's too expensive. So, one of my other things I would have loved to have seen was they did the BJ Rock and Roll review where they brought all the Universal monsters in. Excuse me. So yeah, he's a pop culture phenomenon. Everybody forgets about the Maitlands. I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that the Maitlands and the Mr. Deeds were not featured in the cartoon that came out a couple years later. I know, when you watch Beetlejuice and you hear some of the foul language and the double entendre, and there's quite a bit there, and then they turned this into a kids cartoon. They did the same thing with Ghostbusters, and it worked. You just had to change a few things. So, Beetlejuice, one of my favorite Tim Burton films. I like early Tim Burton a little bit more than, like, current Tim Burton. And I don't know if that's because my tastes have changed or his tastes have changed. I'm not sure. We will be talking about more Tim Burton films as time goes on. But for right now, The Ghost with the Most is definitely high on my list of recommendations for families. If you don't mind a little foul language and having to explain a double entendre or two to your younger kids, the real young ones, it'll just go right over their heads. If the older ones get it, that's on you. I don't want to say that's on you, but that's on you to explain or choose not to explain or just say when you're older. Got a lot of that when I was a kid. You'll know when you're older. Well, I'm older. It took me a while to figure it out. The color use is great. Danny Elfman has got his Danny Elfman stamp all over the soundtrack. I love it. This is what got Michael Keaton and Tim Burton together to give us that wonderful powerhouse that gave me one of my favorite Batmans. Gave me two of my favorite Batman movies. And maybe one of these days we will talk about Batman as a whole, but I don't know. I'm going off topic. I apologize. Yeah, Beetlejuice is it's a classic. It is a Halloween classic. It is a year-round classic. It is a comedy classic. Low on the gore. High on the comedy. Got a middling on the, innuendo and all that. Perfect, wonderfully cast. The costumes and, I think I want to say Colleen Atwood did the costumes because she's been doing costumes for Burton for a long time. And I know V. Neal did the BJ makeup and the other makeup effects, and V. Neal's she's amazing. She's a woman in the industry in effects. That was not really a big thing back then. It still isn't so much of a big thing now. I still hate to say this, that special effects is definitely a male-dominated field. I don't know why. Women, we are very creative. We sculpt. I don't know if it's just because I don't know. I'd like to see more women. I'd like to see more V. Neals. And before you ask, yes, I do watch some of the body painters and SFX artists here on YouTube. I'm a big fan of Goldie Starling and Made You Look. And I'd love to see them really become names up there with V. But yes, V's done some great work. She works with Tim Burton quite a bit. She's responsible for the look of this movie, the makeup effects. This is Tim Burton classic. This is Tim Burton at his best. This is Winona Ryder at the beginning of the long, illustrious career she would have. This is where she's really finding her steps. She has, figured out where she is with her acting. And you can see she's playing an age-appropriate character. Her reactions are age-appropriate. Catherine O'Hara is... I still cannot remember that name. As Mrs. Dietz is just hilarious. Everyone thinks Moira Rose from Schitt's Creek is like her best character. Mrs. Dietz. I love Mrs. Dietz. Well, Mrs. Dietz and Kevin's mom from Home Alone. But yeah. Mrs. Dietz is crazy. And then Glenn Shaddix plays her friend Otho. Oh, Otho. Glenn Shaddix always plays some very interesting characters. He's another one that I think Tim Burton used. No, maybe he didn't. I think he maybe only did a couple films with Tim Burton. I remember him from a lot of weird stuff too. Sleepwalkers from Stephen King. That one we may talk about. He was also in Hercules: The Legendary Journeys a couple of times as two characters. They were twins. Typhoon and Typhon the Giants. And I see this guy show up in things, and every time he slays me with how weird his little characters, or big characters, how weird his characters can get. And he just plays them like, this is this person. Deal with it. Love that. Sorry, I'm filming after work and I'm a little tired. So yeah. If someone tells you they don't like Beetlejuice, you might want to, reconsider watching movies with them. Because even my mother-in-law loves Beetlejuice. And my mother-in-law is not a Darkling child. She's not gothy. She is the most straight-laced little... she's mom. She is the mom. She very rarely uses curse words. She's a good Catholic woman. This whole 9 yards. And my mother-in-law loves Beetlejuice. She loves Tim Burton films. Strangely enough, my mother-in-law also loves Meatloaf the singer, and we will talk about him eventually too. So she has a little, wire upper nose, but yeah, if someone says they don't like Beetlejuice and they don't like Tim Burton films, I'd reconsider watching movies with them. Unless there's like some traumatic experience, and then we're gonna forgive that. But yeah, definitely in my top list of every October, every late September, that DVD comes off the shelf. If it's on television, it's left on. If Deo the Banana Boat song, and Jump in the Line come on, you better bet I'm singing that at the top of my lungs. I think of Michael Keaton. I think of this movie. I think of Batman. Even though I know he was getting his feet in like pretty solidly as a comedian pre Batman, which is why he got this role, I believe. But then you got these two together, and he showed a whole dramatic side to him that everyone was like, oh my God, Michael Keaton can really act. Yeah, Michael Keaton can really act. He can make you laugh. He can make you cry. He can make you go, what? I cannot gush enough about the cast. I cannot gush enough about the movie, the director. This is one of those little perfect storms for me. This is what has become a classic in my home. Even my husband likes it. My husband and I do not always see eye to eye on movies. We'll usually meet in the middle, but yeah, this one, it's like, oh, Beetlejuice is on, cool. And on that note, with another yawn, pardon me, I think it's time for me to call it a night. But I'll see you again. Have a good night, my creeplings.